Online. We're coming at you from a super exciting spot. Where are we, Clint?
We're in our new youth office space. That's right, we have an office, we're super excited. Nikki and I and Miss Amy will all be sharing a space, and it'll be a space for you to come as well. But it's not quite done yet.
Yeah, we're hoping to have furniture and office items in here eventually, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, a place to sit down perhaps.
Yeah. But it'll be all ready by August, when we're hoping to be all back together again, and we just can't wait to have you guys here.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. We are doing week 5 of our series called What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. So what we need you to do, if you don't know what to do, is to find a quiet place, close your door, turn your phone on, do not disturb, whatever you need to do, and just be able to focus on the message that God has for you today, because it's a message and impacts everybody. If you have a pulse, if you're breathing, this is just something that you need to hear. Next thing we need you to do, text a couple of friends, 3, 4, 5 friends. You get bonus points for anything over that. And then text them, let them know, like, hey, log in, send them the link to this video, like, subscribe, do all those buttons, check out those videos that they're suggesting to you, whatever. And then just kind of lean back and enjoy the video, pause it, take notes, grab your Bible, do whatever you need to do to get ready for a wonderful time with God this morning.
So, when you don't know how to do something, how to fix something, or how something works, what do? Ask a teacher? Ask your parents? Ask your friends? Ask someone you really know and trust? No! You go to the internet and ask some randos. But I'm not talking about creeps here, I hope. No, I mean the people of the internet! You know, those people who make how-to videos. Because chances are, if you're trying to figure out something, someone on the internet has already figured it out for you. Things like, how do I unsend a text? No. How do I do a winged eyeliner? How do I get rid of the zit by Friday night? How do I get out of gym class? How do I screen cap Snapchat without getting caught? They'll never know. But then there are things in life that don't have an easy fix, that don't have a simple solution, that don't have a how-to video. Things like what to do when you have problems with family, or when it seems like you have no control in your life, or what to do when someone has done something to you. I mean, clearly, they gotta go. The truth is, there's a lot of life that doesn't have a solution you can just find online. So how do you know what to do when you don't know what to do?
Last week, I was on my way to church and I stopped at Starbucks. I ordered my drink, which, if you're wondering, is a venti cold foam cold brew with sweet cream and light ice. And as I pulled around to pay, I found out that the person in front of me had already paid for my order. Now in that moment, I felt so loved and happy that I was getting free stuff, and more particularly free Starbucks. It was an awesome day. But inside of me, there was something that was like, man, I wish I could pay them back. I wish there was some way to at least thank them or let them know how appreciative I was for that just small gesture. I don't know if you ever received a little bit of love from a complete stranger, just giving you something, or maybe paying your toll or doing something nice for you. Man, there's just this want to just pay them back. And of course, you can have the opportunity to pay for the person behind you if you want to do that. It's kind of paying it backward or paying it forward. I don't really know how that all functions, but you don't really get the opportunity to pay that specific person back when you really want to.
In those moments of not asking to be paid back, those are so heartwarming, right? When we hear about those stories, and less heartwarming when you realize that you're the person who doesn't pay for the person behind you, but I won't name any names. It just all depends on the bank account status, right?
That's fair.
That's fair.
No.
But there's another kind of payback that maybe we're kind of dealing with that's less than heartwarming. And that's the kind of payback that we face when someone hurts us, or someone we love, and we're like, all right, it's time to pay them back. You're gonna get yours.
Yeah.
And we gotta make it even, right? Even then settle the score.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
You don't get those warm fuzzies like you do with free coffee. It's I'm gonna change your life, right? I'm gonna get you.
And isn't it true, like, that the closer you are to a person and that person hurts you, like, the harder you want to pay them back? It's almost like, how dare you? Like when a sibling hurts us in a way where we're like, oh, I am telling mom and you are going to get like double what you did to me. Or like when a girlfriend or boyfriend cheats on us, or a friend starts spreading lies or rumors. It seems to settle that much deeper in our hearts, where we're just like, that payback needs to be swift and severe. In fact, there's like a couple of different types of payback I think that we all recognize with. There's like the public payback, right?
Oh, we should make a spectacle and like everybody gets to be a part of the payback, and then everybody looks at you like, ooh, like you got him, right?
I think those are the ones that happen in every like teen movie.
Right, and people yell things like burn. I don't know if they still yell burn, but things like that where it's like
things
so
like
public.
that.
Yeah.
That's right. And then there's passive payback, or I prefer petty payback.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, and that's like the passive-aggressive Instagram comments, or like if you're hanging out with a friend, you post a picture of you and them and not of the other friend that hurt you, or you crop them out of the photo. Has anyone ever been cropped out of a photo, like a group photo before? Because ouch, that sucks.
Yeah.
And then what's the last one?
Imaginative payback. It's like, and this is the ones that I love probably the most. Like for you creative people out there, like you just you're walking in the hall with this person who you like want to pay back, like you're so frustrated with, and you just like picture like terrible things happen to them, right? Like you like, I don't know, like you drop an anvil on their head. What's this, like a cartoon? I don't know, but like terrible things happen to them and you're like, oh, that would be awesome, right? And like some of you, like that's good enough. Just like this imaginary, like fake payback that you kind of like conjure up in your brain.
Or like when you're in the shower after a really big fight with that person and you're like, why didn't I think of that comment?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
I could have
every
said
time.
that, and what was your term? Burned them so hard.
Right.
Those are the best. And
Yeah.
almost more frustrating because you're like, dang it.
That would have really been good.
Oh.
If I could go back then and say that, then I would.
Then it would have shown them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then perhaps the most satisfying mode of payback is one that we don't even have to be involved in really, so it's like technically not our fault.
Right.
We don't have any blame. It's when we get to watch them fail and like just relish
Right.
in their struggle or
Right.
failure or whatever it is. So good. So
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, it's like those moments where like the girl broke up with you to start dating this other guy, and then like a week later he dumps her, and you're like, oh, that's so terrible. That's I'm sorry to see that. I won't talk about it.
But yeah, absolutely, moments like that. Or when we all have those grudges from like the kid in elementary school who I
Yeah.
won't name names, but definitely wiped a booger on my desk in the first grade. And now you get to check on them on like Facebook or Instagram later, and you're like, oh, you didn't really amount to anything in life. Is that too hard?
Oh man!
Sorry, the pregnancy's got me like
Wow.
out here.
Yeah.
What happens when we
Right.
when we find ourselves there?
Yeah, well, that's sort of payback. And that's actually exactly where we find Joseph this week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the past few weeks, we've been looking at the story of Joseph, and we found him in the book of Genesis. We looked at how he was the beloved son, the favorite son. Dad gave him like the awesome robe. He had these dreams and told his brothers and his parents, like, one day I'm going to rule over you, in so many words.
Took it super well.
They did. Yeah, and then they saw him like from far away, and they're like, hey, there's our brother. Let's kill that dude.
Let's do that, yeah.
Remember that dream he had? Let's see if he has any more dreams.
Would that be public payback?
Well, I mean, there was 11 brothers, so that's kind of public.
That's a crowd.
Yeah, that's definitely not imaginative. It's like straight to death.
Yeah, it's like petty public
Right.
payback.
And then they threw him in the pit and then sold him to the slave traders as they went by. Right? They sold him into a market, and so he was off. He was then worked for an Egyptian guy, wrongfully accused. Remember the whole like wife lied about him, got thrown into jail.
And then he went to jail, got left behind by his buddies in jail.
Yep.
But then finally, his moment came and he was released, and then had really just started to make a name for himself, started working for Pharaoh, and just found himself in this incredibly powerful position in Egypt. And it's like his whole life had been very, like just one struggle after another, but then now he's finally found himself in, where God had promised that he would end up, which is great.
So years and years after being thrown into the pit and then sold off to be a slave somewhere. We find him in this high-seated position, second only to the king, only the Pharaoh in this thing, and there's a famine in the land. And through this crazy, no one planned it turn of events, Joseph is once again faced by his past. Let's check out and see what happens in Genesis. So in this portion of Joseph's story, we see that there's a famine in the land, which means that it hasn't rained, terrible drought, there's nothing to eat. But because of Joseph's wise leadership, the people of Egypt have set back tons and tons of food so that they would be able to live throughout this. Now, his brothers live in a different country, and they actually show up at his doorstep looking for help. And it's an incredible story. You've got to read all of it. It's Genesis 42 through 50. Go back and read it, but we're going to read some of it from Genesis chapter 45 right now.
Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence.
Imagine the tension. Imagine being Joseph, sitting there. Your brothers come in looking for help now. After all these years, you haven't seen them, you haven't heard from them. The last time you saw them was as you were in this caravan heading off to a foreign land, and they were disappearing in the dust in the back. That's got to be like a crazy whirlwind of mixed emotions. Imagine being the brothers though, right? Sitting there, not knowing at all who this guy is, like hoping you're just coming to this place called Egypt that you've heard has food, and you're just trying to provide for your family, and just not really knowing. You woke up that morning not knowing what the day was going to bring and how God was going to pull this whole story together.
Absolutely. In those moments where we've been hurt by the people closest to us, sometimes we find ourselves just wanting that one sweet moment where we finally get to face them again and tell them how we've really felt, or just make them feel a bit of how much pain and suffering that they have put us through. And Joseph finally finds himself in that prime position to show his brothers, hey, this is what you did to me, but this is how I rose without you. And not only that, like, he was in a position of power over them, just like his dream said that he would be. But that's not where we find Joseph in this moment. That's not the direction that he took. We'll read on to continue to see what happens with Joseph. So Joseph asks his brothers to come over and stand close to him, and you can imagine the terror that they must have been feeling in this moment. But here's what Joseph does. Joseph said this, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there's been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant of the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance." I think there's only one reason we can see that Joseph responded in the way that he did. And that's because he had found it in himself to be able to forgive his brothers. Instead of searching for payback, he had found healing for himself and his relationship with his family.
How could Joseph do that? How could he look at his brothers, who after so much time and so much grief and so much anguish, be able to forgive them? I think what he was able to do was see their hurt. He says in the verse, "Don't be distressed," right? And in that moment, he recognized their hurt, right? Their pain as well. He didn't make less of his own pain and the stuff that he had been through, but he didn't seek revenge. He didn't seek payback in that. And that's something that only someone who had chosen the path of forgiveness could do. So Joseph chose forgiveness over payback. He didn't make little of his pain and his hurt. He didn't pretend like it didn't happen. He didn't even say what you did was okay. But instead what he did was take his pain and take it out of the center stage and place God there in that place instead. That's why Joseph was so quick to acknowledge God in the middle of all this pain. And what he was able to do is not only forgive his brothers, but also relieve himself from the pain that he had been experiencing as well. he goes on to ask about his father and to bring that reconciliation to his entire family and to provide an incredible future for them and provide for them as well.
So Joseph goes on and he asks his brothers to tell his father to bring the whole family to move to Egypt so that they could be spared from this famine that the land was experiencing. And then here's what Joseph did. It says, and he kissed all his brothers and he wept over them. Afterward, his brothers talked with him. This may be the only thing better than payback, reconciliation. What's so great about that, I don't know if you've ever experienced that kind of forgiveness in your own lives, but when we're dealing with this burden of hurt that someone has laid on us, and we're carrying that around, we often feel like our passive-aggressive looks or not texting someone back or however we're trying to pay them back in our own minds, that it's hurting this other person or making them feel a bit of what they've made us feel. And oftentimes that's not it at all. A lot of times the people who hurt us don't even recognize that they've done it or they don't care. And unfortunately that's just part of who we are as human beings. So when we allow ourselves to let go, like Elsa said so famously, let it go. But when we allow ourselves to let go, and again, not say that what they did was okay, but instead take our pain and our hurt and this wrongness that we're dealing with and take it aside and allow God to be center stage in our lives instead and allow forgiveness to take place. And that is such an incredible feeling for us. It's a burden that gets lifted, and forgiveness literally changes lives. And we become different people when we allow forgiveness and reconciliation to take center stage in our lives instead of searching for ways to pay someone back. So when it comes to other people hurting us, we have an opportunity to choose a different path. And you can think of it like this. When you don't know what to do, pursue peace instead of payback.
When you pursue peace, you fight for the relationship. And when you do this, you give up your rights to be right all the time. You can't both pursue peace and chase after always winning the battle with your relationships. And we see that in Joseph's life as well. That he didn't try to prove to his brothers, he didn't try to pay his brothers back even with passive or public or imaginary ways, that he chose peace. How did he do this? Of course, with God's help. He chose God's path of reconciliation and forgiveness over his own plan of hatred and just seeking revenge.
So as we close out week 5 in this entire series of what to do when you don't know what to do, we hope that you've been able to learn a lot from Joseph's life and the things that he's experienced, the way that God has moved and shown up even when he didn't see it. And the takeaway for this week is we want to challenge you to look into your own life and see where you may be trying to pursue payback over peace and then to reverse that. Who in your life has hurt you recently or a long time ago that you're still holding on to, and where do you need to search for reconciliation and forgiveness instead of payback? Now, we understand that sometimes forgiveness can be messy, and sometimes the people that hurt you, that you need to work on forgiving, don't need to be allowed back into your life. And so we trust your discernment on that. If you need help to maybe figure out if that person should be still in a relationship with you, if that's a relationship worth preserving, we'd love to help talk you through that. But focus on forgiveness from your own heart at this point. So look into your life, look at the people that are around you, look at the burdens that you're holding on to, and see where you can allow God to take center stage on those instead. And remember, pursuing peace and pursuing forgiveness, you're giving up the right to pay someone back. But this is also something that is going to take time. It's going to be something that you have to choose every day. And so our encouragement for you is to stay strong in that. Man, it's not a race, it's a marathon, and we are right there beside you.
Thanks for joining us this morning. I hope you learned a lot from Joseph's life and I hope you learned a little bit about what to do when you don't know what to do. Remember, this life, this walk, as we pursue peace, as we find our way in this world, it's not easy. But I believe that when we're together in community and when we're following Jesus, it truly is the best way to live. We love you, we miss you guys, and if you need us, we're here for you, and we hope to see you real soon.